Hey guys, so somebody left a comment last night on a video of mine from about a year and a half ago. It was September 2020. I'm gonna link to, there's two videos about this thing that happened, this weird thing that happened. And I never updated, you know, if you've watched my channel like the whole time from that time on, then you kind of know, I think, probably what the outcome of this was. But I never made an update about this because I think it was just, you know, it was just too much. So anyway, I'm going to link to those two videos, and one of them is a recorded conversation with my stepfather, which is pretty interesting. He talks about an experience that he had like 50 years ago almost now, where there was this major synchronicity, and then he goes on to talk about some stuff about Carl Jung. He's a former Army Ranger and has a doctorate in education, I think, and I'm not really sure, we're not that close. And his area of particular interest is Jung and personality typing and that type of stuff. So he's extremely well read on the topic, and is a fairly, you know, he's an intelligent and fairly insightful individual. Anyway, so this conversation that we had, that I recorded and put up here, is worth listening to, I think. I hadn't rewatched either. I hadn't listened to that conversation or watched the video that I made about it ever since then. If you watch the video, the part where I get to where I'm assessing what the meaning of the thing was ended up being completely wrong, so just don't even bother. I mean, it did have the thing I was talking about, but clearly the purpose of this thing was not what I thought it was a week out from it. So anyway, I'll give you a quick synopsis of what it was. So in my earlier videos, you'll see I'm wearing this blue ring, which I no longer wear. It's in a lot of videos. This ring was a ring that my father gave to my mother in 1965, and they divorced in the early 90s. My mom always wore this ring my entire life. So after they divorced and she stopped wearing it, obviously, when I asked about it at some point, she gave it to me. I put it on in like the 90s sometime. And as of that video and these events, I had not taken it off, like, other than to clean it, in over 20 years. So this ring had either been on my mom's finger or my finger since 1965. And so right after I met Matt, he's like fixing some shit around my apartment, and we end up at an Ace Hardware where the checkout girl, who was like much younger than me, said, "Hey, we're wearing the same ring." And it was literally, other than like a slight difference in the shape of the stone, just from however they cut it, it was the exact same ring, the exact same setting. You know, I still live in the area where this ring was purchased long ago. And so it wasn't, you know, it didn't strike me as miraculous to see somebody else wearing this exact ring, but I've never ever seen anybody with a ring even remotely like this. So, you know, I was just like, wow, you know, this exact ring. I have a picture of it on my Instagram, and it's also the still frame on the video where my stepfather and I are having this conversation. So this ring is identical to this one this other girl was wearing, and she said, "Oh, my uncle gave it to me. He found it while he was ripping up carpet a long time ago in somebody's house somewhere." So there's this weird thing where this girl is wearing this exact ring that I wear all the time, that is sentimental to me and is unique. I've never seen anybody with it. So anyway, I took a picture of it, sent it to my mom, sent it to my dad, and just said, "Hey, I just check this out. Isn't this weird?" Had a little brief back and forth with my dad about it, brief back and forth with my mom about it, and then my stepfather called me an hour or two later and was like, with this very urgent tone in his voice, he's like, "We need to talk about this ring, with this thing that happened." And that's the conversation that was recorded on this channel that I'll link to below. And so basically the gist of what he was saying was, if you go back to the end, if you go to the end, this video is like the story that he tells, and then at the end, it's what he's telling me what this means from like a mystical standpoint. and using some Jung terminology that I'm not super familiar with him, other than I know he was basically a psychologist slash mystic, who was kind of a closet mystic, I guess, in a way. That's all I really know about him, but he was explaining some of this to me in those terms. And anyway, he basically said, this is a major thing that's happened. You need to keep your eyes and ears open. You know, you need to find out as much as you can about this because, you know, most people just let these things go, which I definitely would have if he didn't call me. But if you pay attention, you know, this could be a fork in the road. This could be a major turning point in your life. When something like this happens, it's not an accident. And so my conclusion from that was basically, you know, they're talking about going and talking to this cashier and all this stuff. And meanwhile, I'm thinking, this is about my dad. This is, you know, I wear this ring. Like, to me, this ring is kind of like the symbol of the nuclear family that I had that I lost at 12. It's, you know, in a way, that's kind of why I wear it. It's just kind of like attaches me to, you know, and of course I didn't think this at the time, but now looking back on it, I don't wear this ring anymore. Looking back on it, it was always just kind of like, you know, this tether to the past, and especially to my dad. So for me, I'm sitting there thinking, well, God, I haven't seen my dad in a long time. My dad got a back injury, just like getting up off the couch. He got a back injury like in like 2013, and his life just went downhill after that. Botched surgery, you know, scar tissue. He ended up just not being able to do any of the stuff that he loved anymore, and just kind of declined. You know, he once told me, if I can't play golf anymore, just kill me, because that was his whole life. You know, he was retired in Florida. He'd just go play golf with his buddies a couple times a week. And I remember him saying before that to me, you know, if I couldn't play golf anymore, just, that's it for me. And of course, as soon as this thing happened, he couldn't do that anymore. And I in the back of my mind, I was like, never forgot that he said that. And so he just kind of declined. And we grew more and more distant over this time where he was declining, because now looking back, you know, I can see that he was withdrawing, and he put forth this front of, you know, he never wanted to burden anybody with his problems, and he always had a positive presentation of himself. And most of this happened prior to, it's not that this even matters, because I wasn't able to overcome it before he died, but this was before I had a lot of internal shifting and changing about myself and my view of myself. And so I kind of took some of that personally, the distance, you know, because I didn't really think about it much, honestly. I put him out of my mind most of the time. And so over the time that he was kind of like declining, I felt, you know, I just kind of felt for more and more removed, and took it, you know, felt like it was personal, and at least in a way. And then at the time that this ring thing happened, I hadn't seen him in almost a year because of COVID. I would see him twice a year at Thanksgiving every year. And then a few years back, I started flying to him to watch the golfing tournament, the Masters, just for the hell of it. It was good. You know, it was like 6 months in between each visit or whatever. It was good timing. So I wasn't able to go down there in April of 2020 because of COVID. So I hadn't seen him since Thanksgiving of 2019. And this was September of 2020. So more and more, as like my stepfather's talking about this coincidence, I'm thinking about the connection to my dad. I started thinking, shit, like this is about dad. You know, this is about him. My mom's like, call your dad. And I was just like, no, you know what? I'm just going to drive down there. I'm not even going to tell him I'm coming. I didn't even warn him, because I knew he would tell me not to come. He would say, it's COVID. You know, he was very like paranoid about that, I thought. And, you know, I knew he would tell me not to come. So Matt and I just took off in the car kind of spontaneously and started driving down there. And it wasn't until we were like halfway there the next day that I just said, hey Dad, I'm going to be there. We don't have to, like, I don't have to come in your house because of COVID. He was very nervous about that. He had COPD and other stuff. And so I was like, look, we don't even have to talk, like, close by. I will come and sit in a chair, like outside your screen door, 10 feet away if you want. I just wanted to get eyes on him and make sure that he was like nothing was seriously wrong. Especially, I started getting more and more freaked out by this ring thing, thanks to my stepfather. Matt and I went down there. My dad seemed totally normal to me. But as I was just saying, he'd been declining slowly for like 8 or 9 years at that point. He just seemed like his normal self to me. Matt, on the other hand, on the way back was saying, man, you know, he looked like he sounded like my grandmother did, like not long before she died. His grandmother was like, had COPD and was on oxygen and stuff. And he's like, you know, he sounds like my grandmother. He doesn't sound good to me. And we stopped by my mom's when we got back, and she was asking how that went. And I was like, he seemed fine to me, no big deal. And Matt's like, yeah, he didn't seem fine to me. I remember him saying this, and I was just like, yeah, you don't know my dad. He's been like this for like years and years. So, you know, I came back, I'm like, okay, so this was just like something to bring me and Matt together in a car for 5 days, as I said in this video that I'm going to link to below, kind of like my post-mortem on the whole thing a few days after it happened. Well, what actually ended up happening, as you may have guessed since I already mentioned that he's no longer here, not even 2 months later, the just absolute chaos was completely unleashed. Oh, let me stop myself really quick. On the way, one thing stood out about this trip that we took driving there and back. On the way back, for some reason, there's this huge sausage shop that's like right off the main expressway. And I was like, we got to go to the sausage shop. Why? I don't know. I don't really eat sausage. I was just like, we got to go to that sausage shop. So we pulled off the road and went to the sausage shop. I go inside and shopping around all this like cool stuff in this place, off the highway, like somewhere in Georgia. And while I was inside, Matt was outside smoking a cigarette, and a man and woman pulled up in a car right in front of him. The man was bald. He was in the passenger seat. The woman rolls down the window, and the man says, hey, you have to stop smoking. You know, quit smoking, like now. And turned out this guy had lung cancer and was going through his second round of chemo and was like basically, you know, on his way out. And so I was like, holy shit, Matt, you really better quit smoking, because that, you know, like that may have been the whole reason for this whole thing. You know, I'm like, is Matt like about to get lung cancer? Oh my God. Well, no, it turned out that my dad was about to get lung cancer. In the beginning of November, just the series of events started where it was just crazy chaos for like 2 months. But the bottom line is that I had to search for my dad to find him in hospital, because he'd been it's a long story, but he was basically in respiratory failure and ended up having like a huge tumor, and then another series of events that thankfully he did not have a protracted battle with cancer due to some strange series of events. I don't know whether that came about because of my intention. My only intention with him when he got sick was that he not suffer. You know, I didn't want him to be in pain. I've seen other people get lung cancer and how long it takes for them to die and everything. And honestly, I think it's a blessing when somebody who has lung cancer gets pneumonia and like dies quickly. So I didn't exactly intend for that to happen for him, but I did, you know, I did imagine myself talking to my brother and saying this could have been so much worse than it was. I did that a bunch of times, and it could have been so much worse than it was. But so it, you know, watching back the conversation with my stepfather was a little daunting. It was a little, you know, obviously I haven't done that since then. I haven't had any inkling to listen to that stuff, any urge. And listening to it was pretty crazy, especially the part where he's like, you know, you could be on the brink of a pivotal point in your life here. You know, like it certainly was. I mean, your father dying, you know, there's a before and after for that. It's not just some minor event. And so that was pretty creepy. But a couple things, you know, looking back on the trip that I took down there, I'm so glad Matt ended up coming with me to take care of my dad for the last couple months of his life. And, you know, thankfully, I'm so glad that we drove down there and saw him for so many reasons. I'm so glad he had already met Matt by the time, you know, by the time that we were down there again a couple months later, my dad was just in horrible shape, and I can't imagine if that had been the first time they ever met. You know, I'm so glad that Matt got to spend a little time talking to my dad when he was still basically himself. So to me, that was one of the big things. I was just like, thank God, like we had gone down there and that I had seen him, and also that I had seen how much worse he had gotten in just 2 months. Like, if I hadn't seen him when I drove down there, you know, I don't know what I would have been thinking. I'd been thinking like, God, was he like this the whole time and he just didn't tell us? Because he was a type of person that just wouldn't tell you stuff. And so I'm so glad to know that like he was still basically okay in September, and that, you know, whatever happened to him rapidly progressed. So he wasn't he didn't suffer a lot as far as I can tell, in a way that he wasn't able to hide. Let me put it that way. You know, he was still able to basically be his normal. He looked okay, and he didn't see, I was not alarmed at all when I saw him in September. When I saw him in November, he had declined a lot. So I'm really glad that happened. I'm really glad that we went down there for that. And now I'm just it's been a year and a half now. I'm just now starting to realize some things about that. When I saw him, he was like very unfriendly and weird. He was himself, but I did not feel like he wanted me there at all. Like I felt like a total intruder, which he's never ever acted like that before. So now I can see, you know, that I took that really personally. I was really kind of upset by it. I didn't feel good about it, and at all, like about the way he reacted to me just kind of showing up, which normally that would have been totally cool. Like he was just cool with everything like that. So normally that wouldn't have been a problem. And so I took that personally too. You know, I just kind of like had all these bad feelings about that thing that, the trip down there in September, and that kind of carried through to when I was taking care of him too. I hadn't really processed that yet, or processed what was happening with him being sick yet. And so now looking back, I'm really glad that we were down there, because I can kind of see now that something was already wrong. I also realized that his apartment was like pretty clean when I was down there. I'm pretty sure it was a complete pigsty, and that he had to like haul ass and clean it because he knew I was coming. I think he was not in shape to do that. He was obviously had a huge tumor in his lung that he didn't know about yet. So that would explain, you know, he was probably exhausted from having to scramble and get that done. So like I know now, which he didn't have to do. I told him I didn't even have to come in, but whatever. So when I got down there in November, the place was a freaking pigsty. So, you know, just like having this extra experience to kind of reflect on helps. Although it at the time, it really didn't make me feel good. But the main takeaway from that was that Matt got to meet my dad. I paid no attention really to the lung cancer comment somebody made in that parking lot, but it did portend the future. The whole thing is very weird. I'm not sure what more I could have done with that situation. You know, because I was as aware as I could be based on, you know, my stepfather's advice. I was as aware as I could be, but I guess you can notice these things and, you know, see that something is around the bend. But just to wrap that whole story up, so this ring, I don't wear it anymore. It wouldn't really match now with this lovely engagement ring that I have. We got engaged 6 months after that, after my dad died. But actually, so this ring was just like indestructible. Okay, it's like I wore this ring for, as I said, like 20 years. I can't tell you how many door handles it caught on, how many times it almost ripped my finger off getting stuck on stuff, and it never bent. Nothing, it never broke. Like, it was never damaged in any way. 6 weeks after I got back from being with my dad while he died, it caught on the door handle at Panera. That's just the odds were in the favor of it being Panera. It's, a lot of the door handles I open are Panera door handles, but it broke. Can you see this? It broke in 2 places. It's hard to see it, but you can kind of see it's like it's cracked completely right here and about to crack here. And so I took that as sort of symbolic kind of breaking the tie, like maybe that's when he left. Like 6 weeks after that happened, the spring broke, time to take it off, time to let it go. It just, I don't know, it was the most bizarre thing after all that time, 55 years of being worn. It just seemed really symbolic. I'm still not sure exactly of what, but I figured this is the end of an era. It's the closing of a chapter, you know, move on. So I took it off and put it in a box where it will remain. And I think that's the conclusion of that story. I don't think I left anything else out. About a week after I got down there when he was sick, you know, basically for the stay, for the duration, I was out to dinner with my brother at a restaurant, and another person, this is also on my Instagram, I'll link to my Instagram too, there's not much on there, but another waitress or another person, you know, like servicing me, also said, "That's a beautiful ring you have. I also have one." And she had a star sapphire ring on too. It wasn't exactly the same, but it was the exact same stone and shape and everything. I have a picture of that on my Instagram, and I just took that to mean, well, I'm where I'm supposed to be right now. You know, these rings keep coming together. I'm where I'm supposed, you know, I'm on the path to something here, and here's another little indication. So yeah, that's the conclusion to that story. The ring thing was apparently foreshadowing my father's imminent exit from the world, which was, if you watch the video that I made, I talk about my reaction initially, which was, you know, is this my only chance for Matt to meet him before he's going to die? You know, am I never going to see him again if I don't go out? You know, I was nervous for the exact thing that ended up happening. So you manifestors out there can do with that what you will. I'm sure some people might say that I created it. I have to talk about this event in the arc of my intention to be completely free of my central theme in life, having to do with weight and body image, because this thing also played a huge role in that. I got to talk about that eventually. I'm not quite through it. I don't want to really talk about it until I have something definitive to say. But anyway, that's the conclusion. I'll link to those videos. If you're not subscribed to my channel and you want to be, now's the time to check and see if you're subscribed or not. I'm going to perform the service of reminding people to look and see if they're subscribed to me. But I'm not going to do it in the first 5 seconds of the video. So if you're not subscribed and you want to be, please feel free. I don't care either way. Have a great day.